Kia ora and welcome to Tarmac. I'm Harry.
I'm Matthew, and this bright orange, actually yellow thing behind us is the new Ford Everest WILDTRAK.
That's right, and I think that it is just about time that we go climbing, driving, whatever. Come on, let's take a look at this.
Now, obviously a key design feature with this next generation Ranger and Everest both is in these headlamps. Now they've got this new C-clamp design which basically identifies them with the rest of Ford's truck range, and these LED lights in particular look especially menacing at night, and you can really tell that this is a Ford product, and in particular a Ford truck product. This fascia itself is unique to the WILDTRAK. You do get this gloss black metallic plastic all along here, some more gloss black inserts in the middle, and of course a key definer here is that WILDTRAK badge written across the bonnet there, and all of that tells it apart as this Everest WILDTRAK model, which in New Zealand is second from the top rather in our lineup. Now, something that I didn't touch on in the front is of course this color. Now, for the first time we have this available on the Everest, and well, it's specific to the Everest WILDTRAK model, and this is the Lux yellow color, which traditionally we've always seen on the Ranger, but now obviously, as I said before, first time on the Everest, and it just looks amazing. Especially in this light, you can clearly see the metallic flake going through the color, and it does actually change with the different amounts of light around the car, so one to really watch out for. And in terms of metallic speak, well, this highlighted arch here is also in a black plastic metallic sort of color and really frames the wheels quite well. Speaking of the wheels, we here have got the 20-inch options with the Goodyear Wrangler tires, but I know that some markets get the 18 inches Boulder Grey wheels with the all-terrain tires. These are the matte options, however, as I said before, in 20 inches. That badge there, well, that's a little giveaway as to what hides under the bonnet, but I'll go there in a little bit. To speak about trim levels, well, there are 4 that we do get in New Zealand. There is the Trend, the Sport, the WILDTRAK, and then the Platinum. So in that order, essentially, and each car comes with different bits of kit. But in this WILDTRAK, there's a lot of gloss black going on the outside, just like this door mirror there, and of course just like that highlighted badging saying WILDTRAK down the bottom there. I've got to say, these step rails over here are incredibly useful for getting into the car because it is quite raised, and you do get actual usable roof rails back there. Now, if you do know your Ford stuff well, this is pretty much a Ranger up till I get to about this point here where, ta-da, it's now an Everest. So with that party trick, well, unveiled, let's go and take a look around the back. The key things to note here, specifically different with this model, are in particular that badge really, because that separates it from the other Everest models, and that is a key giveaway of which Everest trim line you're looking at, is the badge is back there on the bottom left corner. The boot as well, you can see the Everest badge across there. The taillights obviously are LEDs. You've got your nice blue Ford oval there, which has made a return. And then down the bottom, this very noticeable tow bar allows the car to pull 3.5 tons of brake towing, and does come as part of a optional towing package, which also gives you the trailer braking controls, which are on the inside of the car. Now, under the bonnet, a key thing to note with the Everest WILDTRAK is that it's only available in the V6 spec. But no complaints there, because that V6 is fantastic. So smooth and so well insulated as well from the cabin that it almost had one of my passengers asking me earlier, is this an EV? But let's not go down that route. I'll bring you back anyway to this engine, because it is a 3-liter turbocharged V6 putting out 184 kilowatts of power, 600 Newton meters of torque, and that is a lot by anyone's measure. And despite the fact that you've got a V6 in here, you've got this massive thing behind it, it still gives you a manufacturer rating of 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers, which is just incredible, coupled with a 10-speed automatic gearbox and a 4-wheel drive system. On the inside of this Everest WILDTRAK, just like the outside of the car, you get the impression very much so that this is a unique car, unique to the spec. And basically how you tell that is from the WILDTRAK stitching that you get in the seat backs there, and the contrast stitching that is in the seats, on the dash, on the door, on the gear shifter, on the steering wheel, on the central armrest, and as you go further back on those seats too. And you might think that your eyes are fooling you, but the color of that contrast stitching is not actually Lux Yellow. Instead, it's Cyber Orange, and that's a color that comes on the Ranger WILDTRAK X, and doesn't actually come on the Everest WILDTRAK, but I would love to see Ford do a Cyber Orange Everest. That would look cool. Speaking of things that are cool, well, this interior, well, it means that you do get leather seats all around here, of course the embossing and the stitching. You do also get plenty of storage spaces, massive door bins, cup holders in the middle, big central armrest under storage. You do get wireless phone charging as well. The lot, they have just thought of everything in here to cover a family's needs, especially on those longer trips. A nice little party trick is the double panoramic sunroof overhead, and normally at this point I'd go with the technology, but that again is just standard Everest stuff, which we've covered in our other Ford Everest review. So make sure you take a look at that.
So I wasn't around for the last video that we had on the Everest, so now this time you get proper evaluation of the rear seat on the Everest. And the first impressions that I got once I climbed inside is that you really sit on an elevated position in here, which is awesome because you get a good view out the front, which is only helped by this amazing sunroof that you get in here. But then talking about the space itself, there's enough room, I would say, both for knees and for the headroom, but it's nothing too crazy. Of course, that will probably be because you also get the option for 2 more people to sit behind you, and that's something that we will cover once we are on the drive. But for the people that are in this row in here, you get individual control for the velocity of the air conditioning, and then the exits are here up the top, so you get fresh air straight into your face. And then for convenience, you get one USB-A, one USB-C port, and individual, I can see as well, speakers. So the tunes should be covered from that front as well. So I think it's about time that we take the Everest for a drive.
So we are behind the wheel now of the Everest WILDTRAK, and the only thing that's really changed from the previous Everest model that we reviewed is, of course, well, the wheel setup and then the twin turbo V6, or rather the turbocharged V6 engine. So how does that feel in terms of smoothness, that V6 engine?
I think that we have had the opportunity to see this V6 and other products, and it pretty much translates to here. Heaps of torque, much more smooth than what we would be used to with the other drivetrains, and it's exactly what you want for an SUV of this size, of this nature, that is supposed to be doing towing duty and that kind of stuff.
And obviously, speaking of towing duty, well, we are in the Everest model, and both of us have spent time recently in the truck specification, where of course the suspension at the back is leaf springs. Not anymore though, because it has been changed to accommodate passengers back there. So comfort wise, I think there's been a massive improvement.
Yeah, there's no question. To me, that is the highlight of the change from the Ranger body to the Everest. And it's very clear that Ford put a lot of effort into making the Ranger as refined as it is. But at the end of the day, you cannot hide the fact that it uses lift springs in the back. So when the tarmac gets a little bit more jittery, that's where the Everest shines, and you can really see the effort that was put into moving 2 coil springs.
Absolutely, and I think if you want this sort of vehicle and you are carrying passengers more regularly, you don't really have a need for the truck bed, then I would seriously consider going with the Everest. I think just because from a passenger comfort perspective, it is supremely, the ride is just supremely better than what the Ranger offers, and the Ranger is not bad either. It is offers a good ride by truck standards, so that just tells you how good this Everest is. to drive in.
Yeah, I think that this is the main takeaway. The Ranger was already an amazing vehicle that could handle everything off-road and on the road. And now the Everest just, it seems like it takes it to the next level, because on the road it's much more comfortable, and I'm sure that you will be able to fit 7 people in here and have a great time on the road. But speaking of fitting 7 people, tell me a little bit more about your experience sitting on the 3rd row.
Well, normally Harry's our backseat dummy sort of character here, but this time I decided, okay, the space doesn't look all that much in the 3rd row, as is usually typical for SUVs with 3 rows. So okay, let me, the garden gnome-heighted individual, hop into the back. And basically what I found from that experience was that getting in is actually really tough, we found, because you can only fold the seats back. They don't lift up at all, which means that you kind of have to clamber over the seats and find your way into the back. And basically you can't do that with your dignity intact. Essentially you will have some sort of slip or something like that getting into the back, and we can't imagine our, say, elderly grandparents, for example, getting in the back there either. Your young kids might be okay, but anybody older than, I'd say, about 20 is going to have some back trouble.
Yeah, that's right. That's the kind of seat that we reserve for those that you don't want to give a second ride to. So I'm happy that I was just the dummy for the 2nd row and not the 3rd this time.
The other thing is, once you're actually in the 3rd row, you'll find that the footwell eats into a lot of, or rather the wheel arches eat into a lot of that footwell space, which means that you have to kind of sit, if you are about my height, about 5'10", sit a bit awkwardly to make yourself fit in the back, or be happy with your knees right up against the seat.
That's right.
So it's not exactly the most comfortable place to spend your certainly a longer journey in, but again, I think that's the sort of anomaly rather than the set rule for this Everest, because otherwise it is a very comfortable car to do long journeys in.
Yeah, there's nothing to be said about the comfort on the front, on the 1st and 2nd rows. They are amazing. You will find all the room you need and all the comfort you need, with heated seats, ventilated seats, and individual air conditioning controls. So it's really, really comfortable.
Absolutely, and with the leather, with the sort of surround sound audio system that Ford have done, the infotainment screen, of course, so many features in there, and as I've found living with it, you get more and more used to interacting with the screen in a way that it doesn't impede your driving focus. So I think credit to Ford. I was a bit of a critic initially about how big this screen was and how many features have gone into it, but I can say that they have done their research where that is concerned, and I should know better because I did actually attend the launch for the Ranger when they came out with this new technology.
I am totally with you on that. At first I was not exactly sold on the idea of the Ute. Even when I wrote about a Ute not too long ago, I said that it's the only body shape that I have never owned. And we know that Ford put a lot of effort into making the Ranger what it is, because it's a very important car for them. And I think that with the Everest, they tried to, they have succeeded into separating it into what it is supposed to be, an SUV with this leather frame architecture that is able to tackle everything that's thrown at it, while still making it feel very much its own thing.
Absolutely, and in terms of the platform that underpins this and the Ranger, well, to give you an idea of how much work they did, there was hundreds of thousands of hours done of testing in desert conditions, in sort of forest, in mud, and all sorts of four-wheel drive conditions you can imagine. And that, in fact, Ford did so much of testing, they actually redefined their truck standard, or their toughness truck standard, or Ford Tough standard for this new generation of vehicles. So you can just get an idea as to what this is capable off-road once you start to get into those off-road modes and using the low-range gearbox, the four-wheel drive modes as well, the locking diff. There is so much of technology in here, not just on the off-road side though, but also in the driving. I've been particularly impressed with the adaptive cruise control, because it actually finds speed signs very well and then changes the speed by itself.
Yeah. It's very smart.
Which is, it gives you a couple of seconds. If you don't do it, it'll do it by itself. And in fact, it's so intelligent, it even knows its calibration is not 100 k's exactly, so it makes it up to 103. So then on a policeman's radar, it'll say 100. So you know, how about that for intelligence?
Yeah, we were even talking about this off camera, right? That not too long ago, these utes or SUVs like this were specifically made for work and didn't pack a lot of features or a lot of comforts. This is absolutely not the case anymore. You get wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, induction charger for crying out loud, and all the things that come with making sure that you have traction all the time that you need, a digital display, adaptive cruise, so it has everything.
Absolutely right, and it does remind you that it is, you know, a high riding ladder frame chassis vehicle when you are going around the corners, and you do get a bit of body roll, you know, seeing you shake from side to side. But apart from those instances, it's such an excellent car to live with, and I don't think you feel like you're missing anything because you went for something a little bit more utilitarian leaning, if you can even say that about this Everest.
I'm convinced.
So there you have it, the new Ford Everest WILDTRAK. It adds a whole bunch of unique WILDTRAK trim to the outside with the color, the body trims, and then the inside with these seats and the contrast stitching and all of that. And I think certainly it makes a great case for itself as an offset to the Ranger, if you like.
I absolutely agree. I think that it is, at least for my use case, it is an evolution of the use case of the Ranger. It's a looker, especially in this color. And as I said, I'm convinced. Like the Ranger, even though it was an incredible car, was not exactly the use case I would be looking for. This is up my alley.
Absolutely. If you're into this sort of category of vehicles, but you do carry more people around rather than use the truck bed, this Everest would absolutely be the one to go for. And in this WILDTRAK specification with the Lux Yellow, I mean, you're just saying to people, look at me, right? Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. The button will be around here somewhere. And we and Dave will see you on the next one.
Thank you.